Hello, and welcome to the Indiewood Podcast, a podcast about independent film and the many hats filmmakers wear in order to get those films made. Each month, I'm joined by one such filmmaker where we talk about their creative process and how they thrive within the visual medium of film. And this month, I'm joined by an incredibly wonderful, talented, and special guest because we met in the classroom.
We did.
George Huang is a writer, director, and current UCLA professor, and also producer.
Yes. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep.
Who's worked with some of the biggest directors and producers on the planet, has made some incredible films, and has recently finished and released his own film, Weekend in Taipei. George, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Okay. Happy to be here, Yarrow. It's good to see you.
Yeah,
It's
you as
been
well.
Too long. You were one of my first students when I joined UCLA.
That's right, yeah.
So it's nice to see that you built out this whole operation.
I live here
And
now. This
so,
is
yeah,
my
this is
home.
great. This is beautiful. The view is outstanding.
Thank you. Yeah, there's the Hollywood Hills in the
Yeah, there you
background for
go.
those watching on YouTube.
Yep.
Well, we met because I was a student
Yep.
at UCLA in grad school, and then you came in as a adjunct professor. Is that what they call it?
No, they brought me in as a full professor.
Okay,
I came in with full tenure,
that's amazing.
which is like, everyone is like, that's unheard of. I mean, I have friends in academia who are still trying to get tenure. They've spent their entire career trying to get to that spot, and they're so mad they're still not talking to me. So yeah, but they brought me in at full tenure. I keep thinking it's a mistake, and they'll figure it out and say, okay, we're bumping
now
you
it's
back down to
like year
adjunct
8 now.
Yeah, it's like year 8.
You're almost at a decade. Yeah. Well, they can they do that if you get tenure? Can they bump you back down? I don't think they can.
I don't think they can.
Yeah.
I joke, but yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you're in a great position. The class that I had with you was really wonderful, and I learned a lot of really cool, amazing things about the writing process. And you reminded me that it's usually a 10-week course.
Yep.
And
You have 10 weeks to write a full feature script.
from my
No
idea to
excuses.
first draft.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
10 weeks.
you reminded me that I switched my story
Yep.
week 6 or 7.
Yeah, it was like week 7. Yeah, so like, I don't like the way this is going. I'm going to do something completely new. And it was my first class I was teaching. Going,
Like, what do you
looking at
do?
the students like, can we do that? And they said, oh yeah, Yarrow does that all the time. But that being said, what you turned in those 3 weeks as sartorialist was great. I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is really a great script.
Thank
Can you play some showcase with it? Or
No, that was a different script.
Okay, it was a different script. But
that script is a lot of fun because it's this spy thriller in the 60s in Paris.
Yep.
But it's based on, oh man, there's a blog that called The Sartorialist.
Oh,
that
okay.
This guy ran, I forget his name, is a photographer, street photographer, and he would take photos of people and who were just really fashionable all across the world, Milan, Paris, Italy, wherever. And I just saw a couple images and I was like, that's the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is yet,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's about a
So that
tailor.
was the inspiration. Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
and it was about a tailor who has this kind of secret, agenda, and he falls in love with a spy who's out to get him, and there's a whole car chase through. Actually, no, I'm sorry. The original idea came from, and this is a really cool thing people should find on YouTube. It was a short film called Rendezvous.
Oh.
And it was a film shot in Paris in like the 60s, I believe. And it's just a camera on the front of a car.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And he needs to get to the steps of where they shot John Wick 4. I forget the Coors.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And he's just driving balls out.
Yeah.
And it's like, no edits, no camera cuts. He's like, right there, driving through the night. He has to get there before sunrise. And he gets there, and there's a woman waiting for him, and they hug and they kiss. And it's just like, it's incredible. Yeah.
And I was like, I wanted that scene in the movie. And so that was kind of the anchor that everything else was built around. But The Sartorialist was also an inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, your film, Weekend in Taipei, also has some car chases, which we'll talk about, I think, later down in the pod, because
We have a month. Don't worry.
we have a couple weeks.
Buckle in, everyone. Right?
All those car chases are digital. You told
Yes.
me. Which is really cool.
So, shooting in the streets of Taipei, we had a Luc Besson sort of car team there. And, Luc Besson's done Taken, Transporter, so he's got a whole team who knows how to do these kind of movies. But, the way that streets are structured in Taipei, it's sort of a new city built on top of an old city. So there are these narrow alleyways that feed into these modern sort of highways. And, the head of the car team said, we cannot get a proper lockdown. There's too many alleyways where someone could sort of squirt out, whether it's a moped, a biker, an old granny, with their shopping cart. And if you're like running down, a Ferrari at 120, 165 kilometers an hour, you were not going to be able to stop in time. And so we made a decision, okay, well, we'll just do it all digital. So all the cars you see in the movie that, are racing each other and sort of the exterior, the wider shots are all digital. Yeah. Because, the original plan is, okay, well, let's see, we'll put, the intricacy with which they choreograph these things are amazing. It's like,
it's about
okay, you have to have the hero car in the middle, and then you have 2 layers of cars as cushions that are driven by other stunt drivers. And so they choreograph exactly where all of these cars are going to go. So it's like 12 cars almost dancing with each other, at high speeds, on a roadway. But that being said, it doesn't help if you can't, get the pedestrians not to wander into the shot. And given the amount of mopeds and bicycles there, it was just like, no film is worth, anyone getting
running over a
injured,
moped.
Right? So we just switched to digital, and a lot of people you cannot tell.
Yeah, it looks great. And I was like, how do they do that? It's digital. Yeah. Getting to Taipei and shooting weekend in Taipei took a long time. I mean, where you started to where you kind of ended. I'd love to hear maybe, not the Cliff Notes version, but not the abridged version, but the dense version.
The dense version. So we got 20 minutes left.
We got 22 minutes.
22 minutes. Okay.
So I'd like to hear more about your career, how you got started, how things evolved, and your kind of ups and downs, and maybe, just shed a little bit of light on those moments where things kind of turned for you, and you were like, whoa, I'm here, I made it. Or even just, in hindsight looking back, seeing, oh, this is something that other people should know. Right.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So let's see, to take it back to beginning. So my parents were Taiwanese immigrants, and they're very practical people. I mean, which
is poetic because now you've come back to Taiwan.
I've come full circle. But I'll get to that. The reason I wanted to go make Weekend in Taipei, but so both my parents are very practical. I mean, this is how practical they are. Their first date was the arranged meeting with their families with a matchmaker.
Really?
And their second date was a wedding.
Really?
Yeah, that is how practical they are. Yeah, that is, like, we do not mess around. And so, my dad married my mom to get the dowry, to get, scholarship money or, the tuition money to come to the United States to study engineering, which he did at UC Berkeley. And so the first year, like, he started studying, I was born. And, so growing up in a household like that, movies and TV weren't really part of my life. It was just like, if you have extra time, go do some math homework, go do extra reading, all that type of stuff, which I'm grateful for because, it's like, I mean, you soak up a lot of information when your brains are, at that early age, are very elastic. And, but when I was 9 years old, there was a phenomenon that even they couldn't ignore. And so for Christmas that year, they took me to my first movie ever in a movie theater.
Okay.
And so I'm sitting there in Century City in Los Angeles, and 70 millimeter, up comes Star Wars. And the first image I see is this giant death cruiser coming out of this big screen, and like, going, what the hell is this? Oh my God. So, it left a mark. I mean, immediately I was like, what is this? This is amazing. I need to be a part of this somehow. And so that always stuck with me. I mean, I often joke with my parents because it's like, look, if you had taken me to see Herbie the Love Bug or something, it was my first movie, not to knock, Dean Jones or Herbie Love Bug, but, might have had a different effect. But since then I was just like, I need to find out more about movies. I would sneak down in the middle of the night and like try to get to like the pay cables and watch the squiggly lines and watch movies that way. It wasn't until I like went away to college I had the freedom to sort of start renting, movies on my own with my own time. And really became immersed in that. So
it's interesting you mentioned that because Star Wars for me was the first film I saw in America.
Oh, no way!
Really? I didn't speak a lick of English.
Yeah,
and I was pawned off on a guy who ran the booth of a theater, and my mom was teaching.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Do you want to watch a movie?" And like mimed it.
Yeah.
And then he did little Star Wars, like not
Right.
Star Wars. He did the little spaceship with his hand.
Right. No,
And
the
I was
TIE
like, yeah,
fighters.
and that was and that was it. That was that
That's
that
great.
kind of, I think, started
Wow.
the journey for me as well.
That's very Cinema Paradiso, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so
Yeah.
in college,
Yeah. So when I went to go study in college, obviously, I want to pursue storytelling. I said, I want to be an English major. My parents said, no, you're going to be an engineer. I want to major in journalism. No, you're going to be a doctor. Where we finally sort of agreed to meet in the middle is studying business.
okay,
So I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad, and I started in the business school, but I found that it's important to learn about debits, credits, depreciation schedules, that type of stuff. But I was more drawn to economics because there's at least stories in economics. Like you try to understand human behavior filtered through sort of a monetary lens, and so I majored in economics and. Interestingly enough, I'm sure you found this out at UCLA. But it's tough to get classes at these public schools, and so I wanted to get a minor in English or journalism, but I could never get in classes because the enrollment was prioritized for majors only, and so the only classes I get were math. So I ended up with a math minor. Okay, but while I was there, my first year. The weekends I would never go to the library to study. I would just find an empty classroom in Barrows Hall, which is the business school, to study. And one day, one Saturday, I'm walking out, and this will show my age, but they had flyers up for internships at Lucasfilm.
no,
Yes, right. I'm going, oh my God. This is serendipity. This is fate. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I tore down the flyer.
Like nobody else is going to read this.
Exactly. No, and I went around all of campus tearing down every single flyer because nobody else should know about this because it's going to be mine. I should get it.
Yeah.
And so we started the application process. One of the things involved in the application process was you had to provide a creative work.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'll write a short story. But like every writer, we procrastinate, right? So it's like, okay, well, deadline's coming up. It's at 1 p.m. on a Friday, so I started writing the story, the night before, stayed up all night, wrote it, and then went to hit print at 11 a.m. and my printer died. It's like, shit. So I'm running around all of campus trying to find a printer that works so I can print out my application, print out my creative short story. By the time I got it done, it was like 1:10. And I thought, okay, well, oh crap, oh my God, I missed the deadline. But I still went and submitted in the box. When I got to the box, it was pretty much empty. So I thought, oh, crap, I missed the deadline. I still put my application in the box anyways, hoping it's like, well, maybe they'll take pity and come back and get the second round of applications. I just thought, well, this is, this is bad karma. I shouldn't have torn down the flyers. I'm a horrible person. And this is this is me being punished by the film gods for doing an evil thing like that. Well, it turns out I got the internship because they only received 3 applications.
Really?
So I'm going, oh, wow, maybe
Is it
the flyer
because
thing worked. Yeah. It's like, no, it turns out that application box was overflowing. At 1 p.m., somebody scooped up all the applications and threw them away. If I had not been late, my application would have been scooped up by whoever that saboteur was and thrown away with all the others.
No.
And so when Lucasfilm found out about it, they, of course, questioned the 3 applicants who were remaining. Did you? Was like, oh my God, no. Okay, I tore down the flyers, but I had no idea that happened. So that was, like, oh my God. So my first job in Hollywood was at Lucasfilm up at the Skywalker Ranch up in Marin County. And, you could not ask for a better introduction to Hollywood. I mean, it's nestled in a redwood forest, up in these green hills. George had all the Star Wars memorabilia in his office. There was always something going on. Like Martin Scorsese would be there mixing his film. The Rolling Stones would be on a soundstage, preparing for the world tour. They were filming Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, at the ranch when I was there. And all the people there were super nice, just super, wonderful. A lot of them are still my friends today. One of my closest friends was my direct boss, and he came and helped me produce my first film. And so it was great. It was a wonderful experience. And so I spent 3 years there. And when it came time to graduate, they said, "Well, what do you want to do, with the rest of your life?" And I said, "Well, this. I want to do this.
Yeah, I just want to stay here.
Yeah, I just want to stay here. But I figured what I would do is go get an MBA and, a business degree, and then come back and circle Hollywood, armed with that. And they said, well, if you want to do something like that, there is a program at USC called the Peter Stark Producers Program, which is like the MBA of the film business. And if you want, we'll write a recommendation for you. It's like, okay, thanks. And so, so recommendation for me. For the record, I did apply to UCLA as well. They rejected me. But I imagine that USC, given that it's George Lucas's alma mater, they had a recommendation from Lucasfilm. It's, they couldn't say no. And so I was accepted into the Peter Stark producing program, came back down to Hollywood, and started working, during the day I would work at Paramount Pictures as a financial analyst because I had the sort of accounting background. And at night I would go to the producing program. And so while I was juggling that, of course, my parents are not happy what was going on. I said, what are you doing?
You were an accountant, I think.
So there was that sort of safety net.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, while I was doing that, I would wander around the Paramount lot at lunch and just sort of knock on doors of all the producers, that had offices in the old dressing rooms on the Paramount lot and say, hey, I'm on the business side, I'm working, in finances and, the TV department at Paramount, but I really want to get on the creative side. Do you need anyone who can read scripts, for free? I'll do coverage, all that type of stuff. And some producers took me, up on the offer. I said, look, come read for us for free, and when a position opens up, or when we get a movie going, you can be a PA on the movie. And so there's like, oh my God, yes, absolutely. I would love to get on a set, love to just see how things work. And so I read for a while, and then. Finally, one of the producers got a movie greenlit. It was Wayne's World. And so I was going, oh, great. I get to be like, oh, my God. So, you're going to start work Monday as a production assistant. And I thought, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. But then I get the call on Sunday night from the producer saying, I'm sorry. I had to give away your PA position to the daughter of a CAA agent. I was like, oh, crap. And so, but, instead of pouting or instead of going, oh, well, F you, I've done all this work for free, I still showed up to his office on Monday to collect more scripts to read. And the head of his development, his president of production, saw that, and he just felt so bad. He said, okay, George, come here, sit down. And so I sat in his office while for 2 hours, he called everybody up in town that he knew and said, hey, I got a kid here. He'd be great. Do you need an assistant? All that type of stuff. He finally called Joel Silver, who at the time was like the action maven. He was doing the Lethal Weapon series, Die Hard. He was the king of action, and said, okay, send him over. And so I went and interviewed at Joel Silver Productions and ended up getting a job at Joel Silver's production company.
Because oddly enough, also out of grad school, like
exactly, Andrew Rono with Silver, right? Yeah. Exactly. So so I worked for Joel for a while, and that was probably the best film school you could have had because
I can imagine.
We were there 24/7. There was always a film in prep, a film shooting, and a film in post. So you would spend your mornings in script meetings with Mel Gibson on Lethal Weapon 3. Then you run over to the set of The Last Boy Scout, to see, what Tony Scott and Bruce Willis were doing. And then you'd head to a sound stage where like Russell Mulcahy was sound mixing Ricochet, And so, you were seeing everything it took to make a movie.
The whole process in one day.
Exactly. And so, I stayed there for a while. And then when his vice president was tapped to go run Columbia Pictures, he said, I want you to come with me and be my assistant. And so I went with him over to Columbia Pictures. And when I was there, being his assistant, I'm working the phones, I'm doing everything an assistant should do, running rampant. Robert Rodriguez had just come to town with El Mariachi. And he was just standing in the halls, and he's watching me at my desk, and he goes, hey, you look like you eat. Excuse me? I'm like going, ever since I got here, these execs, these suits, they've been taking me to places. I don't know what the hell jicama is. Where can I just get a good burger in this town? And I go, oh, come with me. So next thing you know, I'm taking Robert on a junk food tour of LA. He notices on my desk I have like a bootleg copy of John Woo's latest movie, Hard Boiled. And so he goes, oh my God, can I borrow? Yeah, sure, can borrow it. Next thing you know, he's moved into my apartment. He's sleeping on the floor of my bedroom. because he wanted to pocket the hotel money and per diem that the studio was giving him, so he could, buy a car.
Because he was working on like low budget.
Yeah, no, it was worth. Yeah, I mean, Omar actually was made for $7,000 on film back in the day, and he raised that money by being a lab rat for some big pharma companies. They would test drugs on him and take biopsy samples out of his arm. And so it was just absolutely incredible. And so, every night we go to like Tommy Burgers or Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. Yeah, it's just some artery clogging, hellacious thing. And he would tell me how he made El Mariachi for $7,000, and it like blew my mind. I mean, non-sync sound, different frame rates, like it's just like what? He broke every single rule that I learned in film school, that I learned working for the studios, And I think he just got tired after a while of just telling me these stories because he said, "Look, you know what you're doing. You know film better than anyone else." And I'm nobody. I'm just this kid from Texas. You're like here in the studio. Says, why don't you just go make a movie? And I go, yeah, you're right. Like, what's the matter with you? Are you not man enough? Go make it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Okay. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go make my movie. It's like, I made mine for $7,000. I know nobody. You probably got more money. It's like, okay, So so I went with Robert to Sundance. Where he premiered El Mariachi, and they stuck around for a couple weeks, and I wrote my first script, Swimming with Sharks. And then when I came back, I quit my job and said I was going to go be a filmmaker. And so, Robert gave me that first push off the ledge. Now, when I did call Robert, he said, "You did what?
You quit your job?"
Yeah, it was like that scene from Risky Business. Like, hey, you said, what the fuck? You just say what, like, oh, dude, that was bullshit. Can you get your job back? And I'm like, oh my God. So, I thought, okay, I'm going to go make my own movie, Robert's way with my own savings. And so, I gave him my apartment. I moved back at home. Yeah.
Was Swimming with Sharks self-financed?
It was originally. So
okay.
I was going to shoot it for $15,000. I figure I got twice as much money as Robert. I'm going to cast my friends. We're just going to do this independent style. And, and Robert had sort of given me the blueprint of how to do that. But because of the nature of who I'd worked for and worked with in the past, all of a sudden, Variety, which is the the town rag, the industry sort of newspaper, got hold of the script, and I started being featured in their dish column. So first week they wrote, "Oh, wannabe filmmaker George Huang, who's been assistant to so and so and worked with so and so and so and so, has written this gossipy, tell-all script about his time as an assistant." And suddenly the script became the hottest read in Hollywood. Everybody, want to get their hands on it. And over the course, as Variety is like charting it. So week 1, I was considered a wannabe filmmaker by Variety. By week 4, they said, young, promising filmmaker. I'm going, I haven't done anything. What are you talking about? So
they did all the work for you.
Yeah, I was just taking meetings, but basically off the hype. I got signed with William Morris, huge agency. Disney came in. They optioned the script for $75,000, and so I began sort of like development hell with them because they said, they said, well, the ending's kind of dark. Can we change it where like so Swimming Sharks is about an assistant who has had enough of the abuse, and so he sort of turns the table on his abusive boss and kidnaps him one night and tortures him, and over the course of that night, you flash back to see what sort of drove him to this point. Disney thought, well, this is a really dark script, and go, yeah. You bought it. Did you not read it before you bought it? Oh my God. And so
they should have Touchstone.
Yeah, hello. So and they kept like making they kept wanting to make changes. Like, okay, so the non-linear structure, can you just tell it in a normal way? Let's come up with a happy ending where the assistant, gets some sort of comeuppance in the boss in sort of a clever way without killing him. I'm like, oh my God. It's like all the James like going, okay, yeah. You made that movie already. It was called, The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox. We don't need another one of those. This is my version of it. So at the end of the day, I told Disney, I don't think this is a fit. And I returned the money to them and said, okay, I'm going back to my original plan. Now this is like a year has gone by. And so I've moved home with my parents, who are just like going, oh, what is he doing? Like they would walk by my like room and I'd be like, trying to do script revisions with like sock puppets talking to each other. And, they would just like, I could just feel them in the doorway just going, oh, so and they started to leave law school applications, outside my bedroom door. And so, it got to a point like, people would call in, like friends and family, and say, hey, what's George doing? And said, oh, you don't need to worry about it. It's like, oh my God, okay. So yeah, this feeling, oh my God, I'm becoming this great shame of the family. I better start making this movie. So I started to, sort of go back to plan A. But, by this time it had gotten sort of bigger. I now had access to sort of real actors, Frank Whaley, who was a big fan of, agreed to come and play the assistant. And, Kevin Spacey, read the script and said, okay, yeah, let's talk, let's meet, let's do it. And so with that sort of cast attached, it's like, okay, well, I can't just show up with like a 16 millimeter. And yeah, we have like real actors. We got to make this a real movie. And so through sort of assistant friends of mine, one assistant friend, Kimber Wheeler, who I worked with at Columbia Pictures, said, I have a friend who wants to get into the movie business and he has a trust fund, and he really liked the script. So he came in for the first like $250,000. And then he referred it to a lawyer friend of his who got it to a hedge fund manager who was like managing managing investments for the, I think it was the Princess of Japan, or something like royalty of Japan. Yeah. And so they came in, for another $250,000. That was enough to sort of get us started and get us moving. And so,
that's cool.
Yeah. So, we got the first movie made, we shot in 18 days, super quick. It was right in the middle of the Northridge earthquakes. I mean, it was just like, it was just like, like the first 3 days of production is like, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to be directing. So the first day, I'm savvy enough, having worked in the studio, that, okay, you have your call sheet, which is when, okay, the crew is supposed to show up. And then off that crew call, you want to get your first shot off as soon as possible because it goes in the production report. Okay, crew call was at 6 a.m., first shot off at 6:30. It shows that you're an efficient director, And so it's like, great, I schedule it perfectly. It's like, it's just going to be a simple shot of Kevin Spacey driving into a parking lot.
Oh, no.
That's it, right? And so it's like, okay, great, rehearse it, we're ready to roll. And somebody goes, we don't have any film. So, what do you mean you don't have any film? We forgot to get it. It's like,
oh, no.
Okay, what time do they open? 9 a.m. It's like, oh my God, it's 6:30 a.m. So what am I supposed to tell the actors? Like, I don't know. Yeah, so I didn't tell the actors. Like, first day, you do not want to see it as this amateur, like just you don't know what you're doing. So I made Kevin Spacey rehearse pulling a car up for 2.5 hours. And he's like staring at me going, what are you doing? It's like, still not feeling. Can we go again? And he goes, I think I know what I'm doing. Like, no, it still doesn't feel right for me. It's like, are you kidding? Yeah, so we got off to a really rocky start that first day. He didn't know what was going on. And so that was the first day. The second day, again, low budget production. We weren't union. We didn't have Teamsters driving like the 2 tons. And so one of the trucks broke down on La Cienega, and it was a super foggy night. And so the PA driving the truck just left it there. But in the fog, a Porsche came zooming down La Cienega and ran right up into the back of the truck and exploded. And we lost all our props. So I'm going, oh my God.
That's the universe just.
Yeah, the universe. Yeah, telling me, it's like, okay.
How bad do you want it?
Yeah, do I really want to be doing it? And then the third day was the Northridge earthquake. And then that's time Kevin Spacey and Frank Whaley going, okay, that's it. This is a sign of God. Yeah. We should not be doing this movie. We're going back home to New York. And so I remember being in the lobby of the hotel on my hands and knees, begging him, literally clutching their legs, please stay, please give me another chance, please, please, please. So, yeah. So, we just finished out the shoot, and yeah, I mean, we are also amazed the movie turned out as well as it did, because we're just like, oh, this is not meant to happen. Yeah.
So from Swimming with Sharks to Weekend in Taipei, I'm sure the production was different,
Oh yeah.
But how has your career kind of evolved from that first film to this last film?
Right. Well, so my second film, obviously, like off the heat of that of Swimming with Sharks is, while it got picked up by a small distributor, and there's horror stories behind that too. And, yeah. So originally, like, we took it to film festivals, and the film so great response. Miramax came to the table and said, we'll give you $2 million for it. And it's like, oh my God. I told the investor, you're gonna make money on this. That never happens, an indie film. And they said, yeah, no, we'll take negotiations. We do this for a living. So just sit back and trust us. So literally watched them negotiate their way down to where we only had a $200,000 offer from Trimark Productions, which at that point was famously known for distributing Leprechaun the movie.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like, so we still have not made money on Swimming with Sharks. So anyways, but again, the movie did what it was supposed to do, and in fact, I often complain to the producers, like, I only got paid $5,000 to write and direct that movie, and I said, you guys got a bargain, and the investor turned to me and goes, George, you should have been paying us. And I go, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. This was a great calling card. It got my foot in the door. It got me legitimized as a filmmaker. And so what did I do with that capital? I went off and decided, because Swimming with Sharks is about almost 8-10 years of my life. So I figured, okay, what else can I mine? Oh, high school. So there was a high school comedy called Trojan War, which is basically about high school senior about to get the girl of his dreams. If only he can find a condom. Goes out in the middle of the night, cannot find a condom to save his life. Hijinks ensue, all that type of stuff. And it was going to be with Warner Brothers and Chuck Gordon, who had just come off of Waterworld. And so great. Everyone's excited about it. I cast Jennifer Love Hewitt, Will Friedle from Boy Meets World. A lot of great cameos in it. It was going to be sort of my mashup of John Hughes and Martin Scorsese's After Hours. Well, things went sideways really, really fast. It's like, Jennifer Love Hewitt's a minor. Given that this movie takes place all at night, she has to be wrapped by midnight. So effectively, you only get an hour and a half of shooting time with her. So it's like, okay, we'll make it work. So yeah, Chuck, Gordon, who was the producer of Waterworld, is coming off of that. I think he has an agenda. He wanted to prove that he could do a movie for a budget. So every night I get called in. It's like, you're out of control. You're spending too much money. I am? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And so I started ripping out script pages and cutting down coverage. And then, by the end of it, I got called in by Warner Brothers and said, okay, we budgeted this movie at $10 million. You brought it in at $6 million. This is the largest underage in Warner Brothers history. And I go, okay, you're welcome. And he goes, no. Our budget department is never wrong. Based on that, we do not think you have a movie. Yeah, no. So they never released the movie. It went straight to video, which at that time is considered the mark of death. And so I ended up in director's jail. It was.
But now, if you did that in 2025, they're like, oh my God, thank you. Yeah, come back again.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
Do this all the time.
Right. Well, it's funny because the movie did well enough in video where a lot of the execs in Warner Brothers who went off to other places, they would constantly call me in, a Universal Home Video or Fox Home Video. Hey, we're doing, a sequel, to this movie. Will you come in and do it? So, I still got a lot of meetings out of it, but, effectively for So the big feature sort of career, my career was over, So.
Well, I'd love to chat more about, because you're still making movies. You've helped others make films, and I want to dig deep into kind of production in 2025 and production back when you started and kind of throughout the last couple of decades. Right. But I think we'll save that for episode 2.
Okay.
For today, we'll wrap things up. And for this week, we'll wrap things up, and we'll see you next week. Okay. So George, thank you for coming on the pod, and we'll continue to talk about cool stuff soon.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Thank you for listening to the Indywood Podcast. You can find us anywhere you find your podcasts or on YouTube on the Cinematography for Actors YouTube channel. See you next week.
From the CFA Network, Cinematography for Actors is bridging the gap through education and community building. Find out about us and listen to our other podcast at cinematographyforactors.com. Cinematography for Actors Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. For more information on fiscal sponsorship, donations, because we're tax exempt now, so it's a tax write-off, and upcoming education, you can email us at contact@cinematographyforactors.com. Thanks.